Hello everyone, I'm Armstrong Williams. Welcome to this edition. We always hear these arguments that white people keep their foot on the necks of black people cannot progress, as if white people have all the answers to their problems, which means they have all the solutions. We're going to talk about this myth or this reality today on the Armstrong Williams Show. Join us. Hello everyone, Dr. Keith Harrison is joining us via telephone. We want to welcome him to the show. Dr. Richard Giordano is the author of Supercharged Learning. He's here on the set. And Maurice Nick, thank you so much for joining us. And Professor Jackson Nichols, Professor of African American Studies at the University of Maryland. You know, this is a timely topic to have. We talk about this thing called white supremacy. We talk about that white people have the advantages, and there are a lot of things that we're assigned to racism as the reason why blacks have not reached the epitome of their success and realized their dreams in America. And whether that's the reality or not, that white people have that kind of power, there is nothing in my life and my experiences that ever made me think that white people had some kind of superpower. They put on their pants the same way I do. They go to the classroom the same way I do. They use the bathroom the same way I do. And when they get sick, they behave the same way I do. So all this power that has been stored upon them, I don't know whether it's healthy. Obviously, it cannot be healthy, but there are a lot of young people who believe today, in order for them to succeed, they have to be 3 or 5 times better in order to compete with the so-called white man. And as far as I'm concerned, and you should be concerned, you don't compete with anybody but yourself. Where does all this come from, Dr. Giordano? This belief that the major causes of why there's not more black progress in America is because of people who look like you?
I don't know exactly where it all came from, but I know it has a very, very long history. It goes all the way back into the pre-Civil War days with the Uncle Tom by Harriet Beecher Stowe and the Acting White, and one group. One movement in black society, Booker T. Washington, for example, and that movement contested by W.E.B. Du Bois, and that movement contested by what some people thought was the crazy Jamaican, Marcus Garvey. When people talk about a black community, I wonder what they're talking about, because it's no more valid and real than there is such a thing as a monolithic white community. People are people. People are different, and so why one person who is a white person thinks that he or she has the power and another doesn't, or whether there's a group that does, to me it's very hard to determine.
And Dr. Keith Harrison, what does it mean when one says the black community, and how does that differ from any other community?
Well, and I wrote about this in one of my first peer-reviewed articles in the mid to late 90s. I made sure that I stressed to Dr. G, I'll call him, his point, there's no one black community. There's black communities. And, when you get at this topic, it's all about identity and how is identity shaped in those communities. When I think about this whole discussion, my research looks at the success of African Americans, and particularly African American men in sports, to get at this issue of acting white or not acting white. I think we have to study success more versus looking at it from a deficit standpoint to find out what are the healthy peer groups, what are the healthy identities being formed in black communities. And one other short comment, the 1999 Stanford football team had 12 African American males on that team that played Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl around the early 2000s. They had 12 people in grad school, and you know what their nickname was? They called all of them Dr. Martin Luther King. So we have to investigate other identity formations in reality.
Now, Dr. Nichols, I can only imagine what you're thinking. I don't want to use sports as an example for the crowning achievement and success for black Americans in this country, because we can go to the area of neurosurgery, we can go to law, we can go to entrepreneurship. And there are all these success stories that despite, from de jure segregation to the civil rights movement to where we are today, blacks have shown that they can thrive. And there are many young whites out there acting black. Why don't we talk about them acting black? And look at the rap music. Look at how they're being influenced. But yet we rather change the narrative to talk about why blacks are acting white. So sports does not do justice for the success and the crown of achievement that we continue to have in this place we call America.
Well, I think a lot of times we make a mistake with this discussion, talking about acting white and attaching that to success. I think that there are certain cultural norms, certain speech patterns that African Americans have, and it's a cultural expression. You come from South Carolina, you know, people spoke Gullah. That didn't matter, you know, that had nothing to do with acting black or acting white. That was a cultural expression, and I think we still have those. However, the idea that acting white has to do with success, when we see that African Americans just alone in what they've achieved in the face of the challenges that you've just listed out, I think shows that we have a strong work ethic and we try to reach success. There are structural barriers and obstacles that stand in our way, and that's just a fact.
It's not just a strong work ethic. They're geniuses. I mean, I have seen the intelligence and the acumen of American blacks. I mean, you can't even see them as blacks. You see them as gifted human beings. You can see that God has possessed them with the best and the brightest to move the world forward. So it's not just, because you can say somebody works hard, but it's more than that. These people are geniuses, and we see it every day.
Yeah, I work with a lot of youth, you know, throughout the nation. And really, as Dr. Nichols alluded to, it really goes back to their education, their system, and the structure that they're raised in. When you look at the world, you look at America, the top 85 earners in the world make more than the bottom 50% of the world. So 85 people, you know, gross more than 3.5 billion. So there are issues there, structural, that, you know, are barriers to success that they see. So I don't believe it's anything with acting white or acting black or not, but there are structural issues that also need to be addressed when you talk to success among African Americans and other minority groups.
You know, I think, Dr. Giordano, I'm going to come back, I'm going to break. A lot of this we're talking about here is that little extra and ordinary. There's just people who have that little extra, that courage.
Called the it.
They have they have that movement about them. They have that confidence about them. They know how to network. They know how to monetize. They know how to knock it. They're like James Brown. Don't give me anything. Just I'll knock down the door and I'll go in and get it myself. I don't want your charity. I don't want your pity. Just don't put any barriers in my way. Nobody's looking for a handout. Most people don't like handout. They want to earn their way in life. And the stereotype is if somebody's looking for a handout in order to make it. No, just don't put any unfair barriers in my life and in my children's life, and we'll do well enough on our own. Okay. We'll be back with much more. Don't go away. I'm Armstrong Williams. Welcome back to the right side of Armstrong Williams. Today, we're joined by Dr. Richard Giordano, author, Supercharged Learning, Dr. C. Keith Harrison, Associate Professor at UCF DeVos Sports Business Management, President and co-founder of the ScholarBaller.org, Maurice Nick, Supply Chain Consultant, and Dr. Jason Nichols, Professor of African American Studies at the University of Maryland. Welcome back to the broadcast. Let's go to this point. There is an issue. I will tell you for a fact. I used to think in interracial marriages that people married for love, and we did the special where I went out and actually talked to some of these brothers, and they felt that marrying some white woman would give them an edge. It would give them more credibility. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. I wish I could not say that. And then you talk to some of these white girls, they'll tell you, well, I wanted to marry brothers because of my parents. Did not want me to date interracially, and it was my way of rebelling, so I decided to do it and poke them in the face. So sometimes race play a role in these relationships. Let me tell you something, that is crazy. It is. It's sad, but it's true.
But they weren't in love? I mean, maybe that's their intention as to why they engaged in a relationship.
You heard what I said the first time.
It was not about love. Married, no?
It was about defiance, and it's about some perception.
I think that's in the minority. I think most people...
You've not heard this before?
Never.
I've heard that those, you know, sometimes people date for a short period of time, but when you want to spend your life with somebody, you know, I think that I know a lot of interracial relationships, and the interracial relationships that I know are completely based in
Well,
love.
then why is it that black women get so upset when black men are dating white women? Is that racism?
No, I don't.
Are you serious? Are you consider national TV?
Well, first of all, I think again you are making an assumption that black women get upset because black
Oh my
men date
God!
white
You've
women.
got to be kidding me. They don't just get upset. They become furious. They say you betrayed your race.
You're generalizing
Yeah,
a
I'm not
whole
generalizing.
group of black women.
Let's go.
The ones-
Let's
the
go.
ones-
Let's go to the phone line.
Can I interject one point on that topic? Is I would make the argument that Latino men, other white men, many other ethnicities get upset when a black man is with their ethnicities.
Thank you. Yes. Go ahead, doctor. Speak the truth. Why is that, Dr. Harrison? Though why? It's true.
Well, let's read Ellis Cole's book, The Envy of the World. I mean, we're going to go there. Let's go there. Black men are the envy of the world.
Oh,
man.
It's a gift and a curse.
I like this guy.
We watched LeBron and Steph last night, the ballers, but if they were in the elevator, for some, not all people that are non-black, people would be nervous. Dr. Rifford Reese wrote a great book called The American Paradox, and he uses data to show it's a slippery slope with black masculinity. Very slippery slope. So wherever y'all want to take the discussion.
Well, you know, Dr. Giordano, he said something I did not think about. When you see these athletes and these entertainers, and you may see them as specimens, however you want to see it, the Mandango, as you've seen in the movies, it is something that people desire and wish to possess, to spend their life with, or to experience. That's just a fact.
Well, it goes all the way back into the 1850s when the term octoroon came on the scene, which is a person who's 1/8 black but passes as white. An octoroon was involved in the court case of Plessy versus Ferguson, as far as the separate but equal in the train cars. I mean, it's all about turf. And it's a cultural issue. See, this whole thing about acting white, and that is a racial component because it's geared to the color of the skin. But it's more a cultural phenomenology than it is a racial issue. And it played out when I was a kid on the south side of Chicago. I was an Italian-American kid living on the south side of Chicago. It was a Christian Reformed Dutch, Hollanders. You know, it was, you can be a part of us, but if you're not going to be too much a part of them. It's not any different now with the acting white phenomenology, and it's a lot harder for athletes because student athletes whom I've worked with, Notre Dame, Indiana, in the program that I teach, at the university level, they come into the university level with a lot of people, whites and blacks, thinking they're not qualified to be there. Kind of a carryover from the negatives of the affirmative action. In addition to that, when they try to succeed academically, then they're slammed for acting white.
You know, Maurice, when you go to homes, and I get a chance to visit homes, and the kids like to show me the bedrooms, it is amazing the number of black athletes and entertainers that just adorn the wall of these kids, mainstream American kids. They idolize them, and so sometimes, and that's not a negative thing. I mean, they're their heroes. They're sheroes. I mean, look at how women look at Oprah Winfrey. I mean, listen, there's something to die for. So instead of us talking about, and I know you don't like to see black men in terms of sexual creatures and that, but white men are seen it the same way. That's why they have the finest men on the cover of People's Magazine. They're selling sex.
Yeah,
so it happens to everybody. So is that something that should be a turn off? Is something that we should celebrate? Is it progress?
Celebrate as far as, you know, children having idols that they look up to?
No, that people that they really admire and want to be like.
I don't think it's necessarily a problem as long as, you know, they're idolizing them for their talent in that sphere and not looking at them as, you know, a great person overall just because they have a nice jump shot and, you know, no other substance that goes along with that. I mean, one of the rappers, I forget the name at the time, it escapes me, but they asked him, you know, what about everything that's happening right now in Ferguson, things happening elsewhere, and he said, you know, leave that to the politicians, we making money. And it's like, well, that's a problem. If that your only objective is making money, and you have youth who are looking up to you who aren't interested in getting politically involved, aren't interested in what's happening in the world, and they're just liking you, and all you're saying is you're making money, I have an issue with that. But as far as looking up to him, like you may like his lyric ability, Dr. Nichols raps, you might like his lyrical ability, but that's okay.
I know Joe Petticone is going to be joining us when we're coming back. So let me get the last word from you because I know we're going to lose you. How do we overcome this? Is there such a thing as acting white or acting black?
I mean, Dr. Giordano said it, race is so much a social construct at this point. So when you get into the acting, it is possible to act into various nuances that may exist culturally within different ethnic groups. And that extends beyond just acting black. It can extend to Caribbean individuals, African individuals. They say they act too American. Once they come here to America, and they're no longer how they were, you know, back when they're various countries. So it extends beyond just acting white. And I think it's more so a cultural construct than a social construct than it is related to anything dealing with success.
I think we're going to come back. Maurice, thank you for joining us. Joe Petticone is coming up next. I think what it is, you're just acting right. You're acting bright. You got it going on. You're acting successful. And sometimes you're sexy in the process. We'll be back. And welcome back to the Right Side. I'm Armstrong Williams. Joining me now, Dr. Richard Giordano is still with us, author of Supercharged Learning. Dr. C. Keith Harrison, Associate Professor, UCF, DeVos Sports Business Management, President and co-founder of scholarballer.org. And Joe Petticone from Independent Journal Review is joining us. Can't wait to hear what he has to say about this conversation. And always delightful and doesn't apologize what he says and believes, Dr. Jason Nichols, Professor, African American Studies, University of Maryland. Now, Joe, you've been listening to all this. Did it make you uncomfortable? Can you relate to it?
Well, I grew up north of San Francisco, predominantly white community. I'm Irish Italian. So I don't really think I can relate to it much, but I know that for my family, an Italian family, my dad grew up in Brooklyn, very poor neighborhood, Italian. That's probably more relatable to racial divisions than what I grew up with, I think.
Let me go to Dr. Keith Harrison. Are we making tremendous progress in the world of race and stereotypes?
I think the better things get, things are better than they were. I mean, I'm one generation removed from parents who grew up in segregated Texas, but raised me in urban and suburban Los Angeles. So but we're not there yet. We still have a long way to go. I think the visualization of tokenism is gotten better. So, you know, when I grew up, I watched Bob Barker host Let's Make a Deal. If you told me that a brother from Orlando, Wayne Brady, was going to host it, and Steve Harvey, you know, was hosting Family Feud, we used to run to the TV when I was a little boy. My parents would say, cheer for the black family. Now a black man's hosting the show. So we have images of tokens of color in positions that we hadn't seen before, obviously, i.e. President Obama.
You know, Dr. Nichols, I think what often goes unspoken here, and I especially see this in the South, you may talk about the divisions between blacks and whites in the country, but we also don't talk about the fierce bonds between the two that exist in this country. There's a deep history between those two walls in America.
Absolutely. I don't think I would ever say that, you know, black people and white people haven't gotten together. We mentioned the civil rights struggle. There were whites who were involved in that. But we still have to acknowledge that there are barriers and walls between us, you know, and you know, someone mentioned, you know, segregated Texas. Some of those towns are half black and half white, but still very much separate, different places where you would be buried, different places where you would shop or eat.
Yep.
So, and today, of course, a lot of those things have changed, but, you know, during my generation, you know, he mentioned his parents and growing up in LA. During my generation, there were the LA, you know, the LA Rebellion. We still have a lot of these things, and of course, Baltimore. So we still have a lot of structural issues that we need to address. And a lot of it does come down to some of the stereotyping. It is true, though. You know, it used to be, I remember I rooted for the black quarterback or the black coach. Now, the best quarterbacks in the league are black, and so I don't really, you know, make my decision on who to cheer for, who's the black quarterback or who's not.
Dr. Giordano, how do we get a copy of your book?
Amazon.com is the best source for it. Libraries can order it, but Amazon is typically where people go.
Should we really care about these type conversations? Do they really matter? What really matters in your own personal life? Does race and color really matter? And like you said, it's class, it's poverty, it's achievement, it's opportunity.
Well, the conversations are important because they play into so many more things. it's not just a conversation about race, it's a conversation about different topics that stretch into areas of everyone's lives. Poverty, you know, economy, everything like that.
Well, I got to tell you something. I'm going to tell you this. If you don't know it, shake yourself. The shackles are gone. There are no more chains. Nobody's holding you down. You got to free yourself. You got to free yourself and realize that nobody can keep opportunity from you unless you decide to give them the power to keep it from you. We'll be back. Don't go away.
When we think of religion, we think of those rituals and practice that our relationship with God is codified into. So religion has to do with the codification of that relationship with God into ritual and practice. Spirituality, however, has to do with our capacity to know and experience God. To know and experience God.
Are you free?
Am I free like right now?
No, are you free?
No.
Are you free as long as you're legal, ethical, and moral to do anything in this country you want to do?
No, I think there are constraints.
Oh, Lord, have mercy. Dr. Giordano, are you free?
I'm as free as he is, and he's as free as I am.
Joe?
I would agree. I'm free. I think we all are.
So why is it that the brother doesn't realize he's free yet? How do we help men and women like Jason understand that you are free?
No, I think that there are a lot of things that I can accomplish, and
You
again,
can accomplish anything you want.
I've had certain opportunities that a lot of people that come out of circumstances like me or had parents like me don't have.
But they've been people who come out of those same circumstances with them just as well.
But let's talk about the statistics.
We're out of
with
time.
Joe
We're
and I.
not going to do that because we're out of
Okay,
time.
now you don't want to talk
I want you to be
'Cause we
free.
can break it down.
What we want for you is to be free.
Look, we can talk
Shake
about
yourself.
freedom.
You're free.
We can talk about freedom, but
we're
let's
out of
talk
here.
about the
Goodbye.
statistics.
Take us out of here because we're free. Come on, you're free. You got to say it first to believe it, and then when you believe it, you put it in action.
Let's break it down. If you want to break it down, if you want to talk freedom, let's talk freedom.